Okay, so with regards to obviously what you're speaking about there with the perimenopause, menopause and stuff, for us at Create PT and with the personal trainers that we're qualifying now, quite a lot of their client base are going to be females in this bracket. I mean, quite a lot of people who have the disposable income for personal training are going to be probably in 30 to 50 years of age. That females are going to be in perimenopause or menopausal states, or they might not be when they first start with them as a client, but if they're working with them for maybe 8, 9, 10 years, that they're going to be going into that phase. And it's so apparent that our trainers need to have a better education on this stuff so that they can help their clients progress throughout their lives. And it's something that obviously I've managed to do a lot more working with you, and we've managed to expand, and we're trying to do that for our PTs. It's one thing that we've spoken about before with regards to the trainers is we used to train women as if they were small men, and that's so not the case. When we have completely different DNA, completely different genetic makeup of how we can sort of work with regards to how our training should be structured, maybe the length of time, how much rest period we would need in between things. That's all going to be different because of our hormonal changes, especially going into those phases. So what would, if you were a PT or if you're working with one of our trainers and they're thinking first and foremost about the nutrition element, what things should the personal trainer consider straight away if they're having a consultation with a woman in this age range, sort of that 40s to 50s? What things should they potentially ask them when they're talking about their nutrition in that consultation?
I think when you're speaking to a woman, and this is probably of any age, you need to find out her eating habits. You need to find out what motivates her to eat the way that she does. If she is going through the perimenopause and the menopause, she has any issues with, weight management or, insulin resistance, and we know that means that, there's a shift between the way that the body is storing energy. It's no longer going into the muscles, and it's then settling as adipose fat. So then you're speaking to your client and you're saying, why are you fasting? Why are you eating enough fat? Are you eating enough carbohydrates? Are you eating enough fiber and protein? What is it that you want moving forward? Because quite often, if a woman is experiencing hormonal issues, she's almost without realizing it made herself eat in a certain way, and that's not productive for her or her cycle or any of the phases of the menopause moving forward. So I think first and foremost, speak to your client and find out why she eats the way that she eats, and then discuss why you should eat more protein, why you should eat more carbohydrates, why you should fuel yourself with more fiber, because, you are fueling the microbiome in your gut, and the better microbiome diversity that you have, the better your hormones will be. So you need to make connections with the food that your client is eating, and you need to connect the dots between the symptoms that she is experiencing.
Yeah. So, I mean, we have that as part of the curriculum with the Create PT. Actually, on the PT course, we make them do a 7-day food diary analysis on, generally people use a friend or family member when they're doing the course because it's someone who they have in their lives. But you would suggest that continue to do that with every client, and we agree with regards to the learners. If you can get a 7-day food diary from someone, you've got a general understanding of what they eat, how they eat, and 100% I agree with you with regards to you'll see habits that they have, and like you say, it's great to then think about and have a discussion of, okay, why? Not telling you how to do things right now. Why do you do them the way that you do? And let's discuss that first of all. Because like you say, I mean, there's so many reasons as to why, and it's generally going to be, like, most women have probably been on some sort of diet, like most men, but women tend to go for fad diets to begin with. So they're just going with what they've done before, like you say, like a fasting or a 5-2 or slimming world. And that might have worked for them in their 20s. Probably not going to work for them now, because cutting out essential macronutrients, like you say, like fats and proteins, they're going to need them so much more with hormones starting to decline. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah, when we talk about hormone decline, there's like 3 main areas of concern, or something that you're PTs need to be aware about, because we're looking at hormonal changes. So obviously estrogen, progesterone and testosterone are declining, and each of them are responsible for a myriad of things. You know, we have estrogen receptors in our entire bodies, and receptors, if you think of them a little bit like locks, and if you think of estrogen as a key, the estrogen has to be available to unlock those locks. And the estrogen receptors are in your brain, in your bones, in your eyes, in your heart, in your lungs. They're pretty much everywhere. So as they're declining and your client is struggling, you need to be able to explain to them that if they are cutting fat, especially, it's actually the power source of all hormones. So if you look at a steroid pathway, you see that all hormones in our body are created from cholesterol, and that is a fat. Mm-hmm. You know, so anyone that is like embarking on any kind of a diet basically needs to understand that at some point or another you will be, you know, really cutting down your options, and you know, you might be training really hard with your personal trainer and just not getting the results. And then you get disheartened, and then, you know, you move away because it was like, well, that personal trainer wasn't good enough for me. Whereas you're sort of not really understanding the relationship that you have with your hormones. Maybe you don't even understand where your cycle is or what's going on with your cycle, and you're eating in a certain way and you're training in a certain way, and it's not really conducive to, you know, where you should ultimately be going.
Yeah. So you say about the fats and stuff. I mean, yeah, they're vitally important for all the things you said there. They are the pathway for all nutrients and stuff to be able to flow through the body. So going for the low fat options, which people always tend to do, would you say don't do it?
Oh my God, that's one of my biggest bugbears, that you have to eat fat. Eating fat does not make you fat. Obviously, all food, all macronutrients have calories. Fat is calorie dense. So I wouldn't be saying eating mountains of lard or, you know, whole bags of nuts. But what I would say is, you know, a handful of nuts a day is enough for you to have, you know, the right fat ratio in your body. But yeah, any client that you see that is really struggling with the types of food, that even when they do a 7-day diary, sometimes with practice, you sort of look at the diaries and you know that there's something that they haven't written. There's something that they haven't included, because you can't go on what they've said. You need to get to know your client. You need to speak to them. You need to become attuned with them as humans, and then you get the best results.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process, isn't it? You get that first initial phase, you build that rapport with any client, and you start to then find out more about them as you go. But like you say, you need that first instance, that first 7-day food diary, that first, okay, can see your habits, can see even things of eating timing. Like, okay, you miss breakfast out every day. Is there a reason for that? I don't really feel hungry, or I do fasting. Okay, we need to start to understand why you do that. Why is that something that you think is important? Why do you think that it's something that is... Sometimes fasting could potentially work for people, but ultimately, if you're not getting the macronutrients that you need throughout the day, then it's not working. What do you ultimately want from this? And I think that's important. Again, with people, like you say, with the female between 30s and or 40s and 50s, perimenopause, menopausal state, most of the time when they're looking to work with a PT, they tend to want to start, if I'm thinking about the people that I work with, they tend to want to reach out to me at that stage because they are starting to gain weight and they don't understand why. And they want to lose that weight immediately straight away. And then you need to re-trigger their brains in terms of all the things that you did before might not necessarily work for you now. And we need to reprogram how you do things. And that takes time. And it does take time. But ultimately it's going to help them through their perimenopause, moving into their menopause. It should, if they do these things right, surely does that not make that whole transition a little bit easier, if I've got it right?
Oh yeah, it does. I think the biggest elephant in the room is cortisol and stress. As women, we are balancing so many things. I mean, you know, you go from being a young girl, you know, you're a daughter, then perhaps you get married, you have children, you've got a job, perhaps you've got elderly parents or someone in your family that you're caring for, perhaps you're running your own business. There's so many things going on in your life and you're juggling them all at the same time, and you're not really acknowledging that your body is going through fundamental changes. And why would you? You know, some women can go through the perimenopause and the menopause without, you know, a single hot flush. And they're like, oh, you know, was that it? And then some women, you know, the majority of the clients that I see are really struggling. And when you get down to it and when you speak to them, you do the testing, you talk at length, you realise that it's stress. They are in a constant heightened state of stress. And that is having a really negative effect on, you know, their sex hormones, so estrogen, progesterone, testosterone. And progesterone is really sensitive to cortisol. And again, if you look at a hormone pathway, you see that cortisol is always preferred before, you know, anything to do with sex hormones. So when a woman is going through a really stressful time, perhaps she might miss a period or two, and then it might go back to normal, or perhaps she's still having a regular period, but she's in such a stressed state and she's coming to a PT and she's saying, oh, you know, I need to lose this weight. I'm not putting on muscle anymore. I need your help. And your training.
Yeah, and then the PT, if they're not educated, they'll go to, okay, right, we need to try and burn as many calories as possible. Yeah. They'll go to HIIT training and try and make them do circuits or some form of real high intensity functional exercise, which is going to try and just burn more calories in that an hour that you're with them. But you say it's just causing more cortisol, it's causing more stress. So you're contributing to them not getting where they want to be. You're actually making it worse.
Yeah, and it's just a case of just sort of stopping your client there and just sort of making them aware, you know, how stressed are you, and understanding that you've got psychological stressors, you've got physical stressors, you've got emotional stressors, you've got environmental stressors, you've got all the toxins in the environment, you've got all the toxins that you put on your body, all the makeup, all the sprays, all the deodorants. All of this is contributing to inflammation. And as that gets worse and worse, obviously, you know, you can't live in a bubble, I wish, but, you know, you can't live in a bubble. And because of that, you know, I think women are not necessarily understanding the impact that stress can have on their lives and their hormones.